right, before I walk you through example problems, I want to make sure that we've all arrived at the same conclusion. So the circumference, in order to find the circumference of a circle, we're going to take the diameter d, and we're going to multiply it by this constant we know as pi. And I'm going to go ahead and label my d for diameter. We also have another formula for circumference, which I'm going to abbreviate as c, but this time in terms of the radius. So instead of giving you a diameter, let's say I give you a radius. You should be able to find the circumference even if I give you a radius. So this requires us to think back on the definition of what a radius is and how it relates to the diameter. Well, remember that the radius is always going to be half of the diameter, right? So instead of multiplying the radius times pi, right, there's actually one extra step that I have to do, and that is multiply my radius by 2. Because remember, this right here, this 2 times r, gives me my diameter, right? Yes, it does. Remember the relationship between the diameter and the radius. So essentially, these two equations, or these two formulas, are exactly the same. They're written in different ways, okay? So if I do end up giving you a radius, please remember to multiply it by 2. All right, don't forget that, please. Alrighty, let's go through some examples of how to find the circumference of a circle. All right, here's my first example. So I have a circle here, and it looks like the diameter is 16. Okay, so I just write it down because it's just important information, right? So 16, and now I have to decide which formula am I going to use. Am I going to use c equals diameter times pi or 2 times the radius times pi? Because I give you a diameter, you should probably use the diameter formula. So we're going to use c equals diameter times pi. And all we got to do is plug this in. So what I expect you to write down, especially when you're showing your work here, you're going to show yourself plugging this in. So 16 times pi. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is use the pi button on your calculator. Okay, don't use 3.14, please. That might have worked in, I don't know if you guys learned about circumference and area before. You might have. But we're going to use the pi button because we're getting older, and as you get older, especially as you continue into integrated math, you're only going to be using the pi button. So no more approximating this 3.14 anymore. Okay? So go ahead and type it into your calculator. 16 times pi. Press the equal sign. So this is what I got. So for the circumference, I got 50.265. And for these problems, folks, I would like us to round to the nearest tenth. So my final answer here, c is equal to 50.3. And this, I didn't give us units, so we'll just say 50.3 units. And there you have it. Okay, so when you are calculating with pi, save the rounding for the very, very, very end, the very final step. Okay, because if you round earlier, you're going to get very different answers than what I expect. Okay, so if you save the rounding for the very last step, you will get the most accurate and precise responses you possibly can. Okay? All right, let's take a look at another example. Alrighty, here we go. Here I have another circle, and it looks like I have a diameter of 8. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Diameter is 8, and the formula I would like to use is the diameter times pi. So again, all you got to do is plug in your value for the diameter. So the circumference is equal to 8 times pi. You're going to go ahead and type this into your calculator. Use the pi button, please. If you don't have a pi button, you should probably either find an online scientific calculator, or if you can purchase your own scientific calculator, that would be awesome. So this is what I got when I typed in 8 times pi, so 25.132. Obviously the numbers continue on, but we're going to be rounding to the nearest tenth, so really it's these 3 digits that we need to look at. Okay, and rounding to the nearest tenth, our final answer should be 25.1 units. And please don't forget your units, folks. All right, let's do a few examples with a given radius. All right, here I have a circle, and it looks like the radius is going to be 3.5. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. And then I'm going to write down the formula I'm going to use. I'm going to use 2 times pi times r. You might see it written like this as well, 2 pi r. Now, all we got to do is plug things in. So we have this 2, we have this pi, and then we also have the radius, which is 3.5. You might be saying, Mr. RG, but we wrote 2 times r times pi up top. And then I would say, yes, we did. However, remember that multiplication is commutative, meaning we could write multiplication in any order we want to. So this 2 pi r is actually the more common version that you'll see. I'm not sure why I wrote 2 times r times pi. Anyway, but that's the version you'll see. All right, so we type this into our calculator using the pi button, right? So you're going to do 2 times pi multiplied by 3.5. And the value that I got was 21.991, rounding to the nearest tenth. So it looks like actually my rounded answer is going to be at 22 units here. The circumference is 22 units. Alrighty, not too bad, am I right? Let's do one more example. You could be presented with a problem like this where I just tell you, hey, the radius is 6 inches. Find the circumference, please. So in this case, you know that r is 6, so you should probably use the formula 2 pi r, or 2 times pi times r. And then we're going to go ahead and plug these things in. So 2 times pi times 6. I know that 2 times 6 is 12, so I could rewrite this like this, and then I just have 12 times pi, and I could type that into my calculator. And again, I'm going to remind you we're using our pi button here. And this is what I got, 37.699. Rounding to the nearest tenth, my answer becomes 37.7, and we are in inches. So that would be the circumference of the circle with a radius of 6 inches. Okay, the last 2 problems that I'm going to share with you are going to practice finding the radius or the diameter given the circumference. All right, here we go. So in question number 5, we are given the circumference of 56.62 centimeters, and our job is to find the radius. Okay. My advice is to use this formula, C equals the diameter times pi, as a reference. Okay. We can use our fact families to help us solve for the diameter, right? Because if we find the diameter, we can definitely find the radius. So if I divide both sides by pi, right, these pi's are going to cancel out. So, oh, hey, look. If I divide my circumference by if I divide my circumference by pi, I should get my diameter. So that's what we're going to use to help us solve this problem. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit and then keep this over here for reference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my circumference, which is 56.62, and I'm going to divide it by pi, and that should give me my diameter. Okay, but remember that this question is asking us to find the radius. So I know it's going to be very tempting to round the diameter, but I have to insist that we save the rounding for very last. Okay, all right, so we're going to do 56.62, so type this into your calculator, and we're going to divide it by pi. So use the pi button there. All right, so hold on, 56.62 divided by pi. There we go. And so my diameter is equal to 18.022705, right? So on and so forth. Okay, save that please. Now, remember, to find the radius, all you got to do is divide the diameter by 2. So on your calculator, don't clear it please. Don't clear it. You're going to press divide by 2. And your radius should be this, 9.011 approximately. And we're going to round to the nearest tenth. So our radius is approximately 9 centimeters. There you have it. Let's do one more example and let's find the diameter. So very similar concept here. We're given the circumference and we're looking for the diameter. So remember, to find the diameter, you can take the circumference and divide it by pi. Okay? So we're going to take the circumference of 15.7. We're going to divide it by pi, and that should give us the diameter. So go ahead and punch that into your calculator, please. 15.7 divided by pi. And this is the answer that I got, 4.997465, so on and so forth. Let's round it to the nearest tenth. We should get approximately 5 inches for the diameter. Alrighty, I hope you're enjoying this realm of circles. We'll continue with area next time. Alright, see you in the next lesson.